What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, we'll be taking a look ahead to the upcoming Pluto and Aquarius Transit, as well as the consequences of spiritually copying. So, let's get into it. So, the first place I want to start with this concept is, let's start with Leo. Which is ruled by the sun. And Leo pertains to individuality, your one's true essence. It's ruled by the sun. So I'm under the belief that everyone is the son of their own universe, which is pretty much true, being that everyone is born with a sun sign. Everyone has a purpose, ability to radiate light. Right? So we start with Leo and we think about just the sun. What does the sun do for us? It illuminates, it inspires, it invigorates, it provides warmth, all of that. With Aquarius being the opposite sign of Leo, we find that, like, what's the sun doing that for? It's doing that for others. Not for the attention that it gets for others, but out of a care, out of a duty. Let me shine this light upon y'all. Let me inspire or enlighten y'all. If it's dark out here, let me bring this essence. So everybody within their own sun sign has something to contribute to the greater whole. And we all have a layer of magnetism, and that's going to differentiate depending on your sign and your all-out energetic configuration. So inspiration is a natural part of life. When it comes to this concept of, like, being a copycat, spiritually copying one another's, this is going to become more prevalent as Pluto transits Aquarius. And part of that reason is because Aquarius pertains to conformity. It is the group. It is the group in which we find fellowship. Oh, I'm an astrologer. Here are other astrologers. I'm a police officer. Here's other police officers. Now, here's another thing about human nature is that we're programmable. Just like we're always kind of looking towards the sun. We ourselves are the sun. But within being the sun, you don't consciously recognize that. So it's that natural magnetism that each individual holds that naturally inspires others that they interact with. Because remember, you're the son of your universe, so you don't consciously recognize that, but others who are viewing your sun see that uniqueness. Now, when we bring in the concept of spiritual copying, what happens here is, like, when you have a particular individual who may become too enamored with the light of a particular person, and they lose sight of cultivating their own light. Now, what I want to express here is that this is actually rather normal. The nature of humans and inspiration, you are going to mimic that person who inspired you, but the natural flow of the energy should allow you to tap into your own individuality. How we can view this astrologically is going to be the sun sign. It's going to be the 5th house. It's going to be Venus. And then more importantly, the nodes of the moon, the north and the south. When it comes to this concept, the leading catalyst for this type of behavior, spiritual copying, is going to be Rahu, or the north node of the moon. And the reason being is because, in essence, Rahu's like the worldly ego that we're wishing to embody within this life. If you understand the concept of the myth that Rahu is just the head, you see that it could never be satisfied because it's incomplete. It doesn't have Ketu, or the south node. But in life, the more you actually lean into and go towards that north node, you can use that south node as a springboard to empower you, or rather that south node, and also this could correspond to the moon too, who you really are internally is going to shine through within the new endeavor. When a person is spiritually copying, they're coming from a place of being energetically deficient. It's like a lack of patience. And if we look at the south node is like the more spiritual or more detached, right? Rahu is not patient. It's like, I want it now. So let's just say the example was, okay, in order to access this greater clarity or destiny, you need to meditate. You need to slow down. It's going to come, right? It's going to come in time. The person who's like spiritual copying is going to seek to go the opposite direction and try to acquire success as fast as possible. Now, how this applies to Pluto and Aquarius again is that anyone could learn artificial intelligence, right? We all have access to the same resources. From my vantage point, whenever I study upon AI, how to, make it work for me, all of this, it does lead back to this scenario of copying others. It's like, oh, if a person has done this, you could just take what they did, tell AI to summarize it, and then bam, you have a potential project. That's microwave spirituality. That's microwave success. You want to also think of Rahu as this energy that is fake it till you make it. Win at all costs. Okay? But the key thing, one never gains fulfillment through this approach. When a person is integrating their individuality in a healthy way via the nodes, what you'll have is, if the person is some type of artist or whatever destiny or a path they choose within life, the remnants of their south node, things of their past, are going to be there as a reminder. I'm going to give the example of, let's say, people who passed away early in lives, but they were attached towards the childhood in which they lived. Evolutionary wise, they may be at a point where it's like, well, now the lesson here is to be successful, right? And the universe will create a pathway for them to be successful. Let's say they're a doctor. They become a doctor, which is like, okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to study, do all of this. Let's say the person not just becomes a doctor, but they become a children's doctor, specializing in children's surgery. So saving children who are ill early on in life. Do you see the reflection here? So that's when you're integrating your creativity and originality in a healthy way. Now, the next thing I want to bring up with this is, once again, Neptune in Pisces. I'm going to keep reminding y'all of this, that I don't think everyone's really consciously realized the time in which we've been living in. Neptune, of course, rules Pisces. And since it went in there in 2012, we know that that coincided with the end of the Mayan calendar. And essentially it represented, let's call it a portal being open that allowed many people to attune themselves spiritually in some type of way. In that time, there have been people who have achieved massive material success. And then there's others like myself who I feel like I've achieved success, but I've also achieved a layer of spiritual development that I could say for myself. Okay? Now, with that, when me bringing up Neptune and Pisces, this is once again amplifying the ability for this to occur, spiritual copying. So if you're a person carrying a lot of light, you're very susceptible to this. But it's like, how do you recognize you're carrying a lot of light? And it's not just like a person out here preaching about positivity or anything like that. It's a person who's anchored into their own creative essence. That's who is holding the light. And then that light is offsetting certain shit in the matrix. Okay? So a lot of times those really shining the light aren't conforming to the fuckery. If I'm being real with you. So this whole thing is really funny. So I'm gonna say this, and this is an advice. Like I said, this whole thing is funny because when it comes to YouTube, I've been doing this a minute. If you don't reach out to me, you don't follow me on other socials, if you don't make it a point to connect, I don't know who you are. But you can watch me and benefit from my light and things like that. That within itself is also Neptune in Pisces. You can have hidden enemies, hidden admirers, all types of things, okay? By us broadcasting ourselves via the internet, we all open ourselves up energetically to whatever. Then you got to think within, okay, like I'm not going to be afraid to, post or shine my light. Nah, but there is a mindfulness that when you're developing spiritually or consciously that you just have. Remember, no one told us how to use the internet. In a more sophisticated society or a different age, the internet would easily have regulations and if we're being honest, too much of anything makes it lose its value. So realistically, we've all fed into the idea of consume content, but at the same time, our connection with the content has also lost value. And I believe that this is going to continue to occur for those who haven't made themselves heart-centered. Now, this is my advice. I don't judge anybody for how they broadcast or shine their light, because we're all individuals. But I would give the advice and say that, because these are things that have been said to me. Spirituality and mass content don't go together. A person who's thinking may look at something and say, how can someone have all this spiritual insight if they're constantly posting every day? When are they taking the time to reflect? To each his own. I know for myself, there are things within my soul that I'm aware of, so it won't allow me to do. Like, for example, I come here and I teach you guys, but these type of teachings aren't the same as like being in a classroom with me. Not physically, but just like being in a controlled environment, getting a proper teaching. I respect the information and my wisdom too much to do that. Spirit has guided me on what to share. When you look closely, the spiritual copycats, they teach everything. They know about everything. But when you really understand life, if you have astrology, if you have tarot, if you have numerology, and you're an expert on all of those, and you're making content on all of those, how can you master one? You know what I mean? So these are the times in which we're living in. It goes back to Neptune and Pisces, where it further accentuates the fake it to the make it, or rather it allows the individual to really have to see what's in front of them, right? Those who accept everything at face value are likely to end up with those being copycats is real teachers and things of that nature. So as we go further into Pluto and Aquarius and the technology gets more rampant and, things become easier to do or reproduce. We've already seen it with the music. Your discernment, your spiritual intuition is really going to be called on. All right. So I really encourage you guys to start just looking a little bit closer. Now, I want to say this, like the person who is indeed the spiritual copycat, in essence, for those who can really see or those who are really in tune, the word will never resonate. I could just go for a person like me. I'm only attracted to other teachers or people presenting information in which I can feel their own individuality or creativity within it. Very, very easy to, at least for me, to sense when someone isn't authentic with this, because when you really understand astrology, you understand like, oh wow, this person's their whole own chart. And if you can't feel that chart in their work, they just regurgitating information. Lastly, I'll say this upon this is just advice, because, I don't want anyone out there, feeling judged. But if I never wrote my book, Astrology of the Matrix, I would not have been able to continue ascending as this unique individual. My book is my soul and how my soul relates to this information, how it sees it, how it absorbs it. So as we go on, I'm telling you, you might see someone who you enjoy their videos or even their Twitter posts. I got to tell you, I can't really trust posts because this is really something that can be copied. You know what I mean? I've come in contact with spiritualists out there who their posts are amazing, but mentally and interacting with them, I feel nothing of that mental energy attached to their posts coming from them. It's another way to kind of recognize that. And those people exist. So what I'm saying, as we go forward, there are going to be people who continue to produce content and do all of this. But remember, AI is there. And there just might be this lack of spirit within the work. So this is more of what we have to come. And if you're out there watching, at least ask yourself, am I guilty of this? And seek to stop, because it's preventing you from tapping into your own individual nature. And that's what we all want to see. All right. Till next time.